Judith is one of the loveliest stories that is found anywhere in the Bible. Sadly, a lot of people don't even think it's in the Bible, and even fewer who have seen it have actually read it.
Judith is a fictional tale about this woman Judith who saves Israel.
It's a novel. And you might think, well, what's a novel doing in the Bible? Well, we learn an awful lot from novels, and we all love a good story, and stories don't come better. All right, there's a lot of religion in it, but stories don't come better than Judith. Judith is the nearest the Bible comes to having a James Bond girl.
It's obviously fictional because it brings together a whole heap of contrasting scenarios into one situation.
Here's the story in a nutshell. The baddies attack. The people are about to surrender and give up. If they surrender and give up, they become the servants of the attackers, and that means they give up believing in God.
So this is from Judith chapter 4. When the Israelites living in Judea heard of everything that Holofernes, the general of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of the Assyrians, had done to the nations, and how he had plundered and destroyed all their temples, they were therefore greatly terrified at his approach.
Judith says, no way. She will go out and take on the enemy single-handed because she trusts in God.
And this is an important theme of the literature of this period, is that it's always, or so often it's setting up this scenario where there's foreign domination and we've got to trust in the Lord to liberate us.
We're told she's very attractive, so needless to say she's brought into the enemy leader's camp. There's a big drunken feast. Then she cuts his head off. His name is Holofernes.
And she does it by seducing the general Holofernes and then chopping off his head while he's drunk.
The enemy are defeated, and Judith becomes the hero of the people of Israel.
But this image of Judith cutting off Holofernes' head and then holding up that head, that's very famous. So, for example, I think on the roof of the Sistine Chapel, that image is there.
It represents what's going on in the book of Judith, this idea of triumphant defiance. So we've gone up against the enemies and we've prevailed because the Lord has brought us victory. And different literature approaches it differently. So in Daniel, the idea is let's wait on the Lord and God's kingdom will come and destroy human kingdoms. And let's wait for God and he'll save us. In Judith, it's a bit more activist than that. That is, we can kind of nudge God into action. It's still God who's going to save us, and it's only the Lord who can bring about a reversal of fortunes, but we can kind of nudge him to get the ball rolling.
But the writer of Judith has a lot of other things that he wants to get into as well. And for instance, he wants to say, what sort of God do we as a people believe in? And he has a lovely phrase.
One of the key points, I think, in the book is how the might of the Assyrian Empire, and it says at one point they have something like 180,000 warriors, something like that, is defeated by one woman, the hand of a woman, it keeps saying, a woman who's faithful to the God of Israel.
How come that God will choose me, a woman, to be the person who will deliver Israel? And she says, for your strength does not depend on numbers, nor your might on the powerful, but you are a God of the lowly, helper of the oppressed, upholder of the weak, protector of the forsaken, saviour of those without hope. So it's a fantastic tale, and it was very popular. The early Christians used it extensively. Because it was the story that God just doesn't abandon his people. The reason I call her a Bond girl is she comes from a mythical city called Bethuli. It doesn't exist. That's the place. There's a reason why they don't want to have her from a real city, because every town has to be able to claim Judith. The word Judith means the Jewess. So she's any woman. She's any woman, but she can do fantastic things.
Yeah, it says there's a number of descriptions that say how good looking Judith is. So it says she's beautiful and wise. And we hear all sorts of things. First of all, for a long time she's in mourning. So since her husband dies, she wears sackcloth and lives in a tent on the roof of her house, it says. So she's in mourning. So in a way, Israel, the Israelites, don't see her beauty. Then all of a sudden, when it comes to this time when she's going off to seduce Holofernes, she dolls herself up. So she takes off her sackcloth, puts on a makeup, all this kind of thing. And the Israelites at first, they're amazed by her beauty because they've seen her only in her mourning clothes most recently. Then she goes out of the camp, and the first sort of soldiers she meets, the Syrian soldiers, they're amazed by her beauty. They're convinced to take her to their leader Holofernes. And then as she comes in to the Assyrian camp, it says in Judith that the soldiers are coming out of their tents. Word has got round, so they're all there to look at Judith.
Yeah, well, she is described as being gorgeous and irresistible and all of that. I mean, there are different ways of taking this, the book of Judith. On the one hand, you might say, well, this is open to positive feminist readings of the book because, you know, we've got a female hero who, she's the strong one, she comes up with the plan, she prays to God, she acts on it in a daring way. On the other hand, you could say, actually, the way she's presented as winning is by using her seductive charms, and maybe she's not presented in such a good way then.
Judith is listed as one of the deuterocanonical books, and within the tradition that I come from, the Anglican tradition, it's very interesting because the way the deuterocanonical books are described is as useful for personal edification, but not for the formation of doctrine.
The standard Protestant Bible doesn't have the book of Judith and a number of other books. Those books are thought of as the Apocrypha.
Actually, I brought along this, which is the Book of Common Prayer, which is used for a number of services in the Church of England. And it contains also a list of what's called the 39 Articles, so the formulation of Anglican teaching, if you like.
The reason so few people know about this book is that this book was probably written in Hebrew or Aramaic. It was written sometime in the 2nd century. The time of the Maccabean revolt would make perfect sense, so between 160 and 100 years before the time of Jesus. But it was only translated, it only survives in Greek. So when the Hebrew Bible was being put together in the 1st and 2nd, at the end of the 1st and in the 2nd centuries of the Common Era, so about 200 years after it was written, this book didn't meet the criterion of existing in Hebrew and therefore being ancient, and so it was dropped out.
So the 6th article talks about which books should be in the Bible. And first of all, it gives a list of what are called the canonical books, and those are all the books that we have in our traditional Protestant Bibles from Genesis all the way through to Revelation. And then it lists some other books. It says, these other books the church doth read, for example of life and instruction of manners, but yet doth it not apply them to establish any doctrine. Such are these following, and these are the ones that we generally call the deuterocanonical books.